So now I'm going to show you how to start thinking through your design for your tunnel book. So I know that I want my design to have 5 layers, so I went ahead and drew an accordion fold layout up here at the top just so that I can keep each layer straight and I can think about how I'm going to actually start assembling it once I have my frames cut. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways to cut out designs or objects in your frames. One is going to be with scissors and the other an X-Acto knife. So if you do not have an X-Acto knife at home, you do not need to go buy one. You can use scissors for this entire project. It might be a little bit more challenging, but it's definitely doable. So in the center here, I have just a quick sketch of what I want my final tunnel book to look like. I want to do some bushes and trees and have a very simplistic forest scene. So to test out how I'm going to do my layers, I redrew my design up here, and then I color-coded every single layer. So as you can see, the bushes up here are going to be on the front layer, so I also circled the number 5 in green, and down here, I laid out every single frame. If you try to just start doing this and you don't plan ahead, you're going to get confused, and it's probably not going to work out as well as if you planned it ahead of time. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out number 5 here, and I'm going to use scissors to show you how to do this. So the first thing I need to do is figure out what is on this layer. So I'm looking over at my book and I see that the shrubs are on number 5. So because I'm using scissors, I'm going to actually cut the frame out first before I attach my shrubs. I'm going to grab my scissors. You obviously can't start cutting at the end because it's going to ruin your frame. So what I do for this is I do not crease it, I just kind of lightly fold it in half, make a cut, open it back out. So you can see I have a cut in the middle here. And because I don't need any of this center space, I'm just going to very recklessly cut through it until I get to the edge. And then I can start going around. Alright, so I have my frame cut out. I can actually use this scrap paper that I have to start drawing my bush. Alright, so I'm going to cut out my bush. Second. Alright, so I have my bushes for my front layer. So you can take some glue and just simply glue it onto the frame. If you want it on the front part of the frame, you can do that. I think I might actually, yeah, I'm going to put it on the front part. Not gonna lie, guys, these Gorilla glue sticks that you got in your supply kit are absolutely horrible and I would not recommend them. So if you have other glue available, I would use that. If you want to make your tunnel book in color, I would recommend coloring all of your designs before you start gluing them on. So I'm going to pull out number 4. Now I'm going to look on my little cheat sheet here, my planning, and I see that number 4 is brown. I'm doing this big tree, and I should draw out my tree to look like this. So for this frame, I'm going to show you how to do it with an X-Acto knife. If you're using an X-Acto knife, you want to make sure everything is drawn out first before you start cutting it. So I'm going to look here at my planning. I see that I have a tree on the right side going all the way up to the top, and it's actually kind of cut off by this top frame. Alright, so I'm going to cut this out with an X-Acto knife. So it's important that you make sure, 1, your X-Acto knife is sharp, and 2, you have something underneath where you're cutting so that you don't cut through onto your desk or the paper underneath. So always cut away from yourself when you're using the X-Acto knife. Alright, now I have my second layer. After each layer, you should test it by placing it on top of one another, just to make sure you don't have any mistakes. Now I'm going to work on the rest of my. So I couldn't help myself, and I decided to add some Zentangle lines on here just to make it a little bit more interesting. I was going to make a very basic white book, but as I said, couldn't help myself. So I have all of my layers here. I cut out each individually, either using an X-Acto knife or scissors, depending on which layer it was. For my last layer, I have just a black piece of paper. So you can choose whether or not you want to have a solid looking back or if you want to cut out the frame. For this, I really like the black. Decided to switch that from the white because it really makes the designs pop. I think I'm going to go over it with a white gel pen just to add a few more trees in the background here. So now I have all my frames done and it's time to start assembling. So after I did the pen work, I put it together and I hated it. Way too busy. So I decided I'm going to keep the white gel pen part and just make that my back cover. So I'm going to flip it over and then I added some just plain white trees. So when it's done, it's going to look like this. So now I need to lay out my accordion folds. So I'm going to put them on either side of my frames. And I'm going to start with frame number 1, the back layer, and work my way to 5. If you decide that you do not like the way it looks after you finished, you can also flip around your frames. It doesn't matter which order. Those numbers you put were just a guide for you, but you don't have to necessarily follow them. Alright, so now I'm going to start with frame number 1, my back frame. Put the others aside. Make this a little bit easier on myself. I'm just going to glue one side first and then work on my other side. It's easier to get them straight that way. That's pretty good. So I have frame number 1 done. Now I need to do number 2. So I'm going to grab number 2, match it up. Make sure the frame is even and it fits in there. Looks like we're good to go. Alright, so now I'm going to do number 3. Grab frame number 3. Alright, frame number 4. Alright, and then we have our final layer. At this point too, you want to make sure you have erased all of the numbers on the frames, because otherwise you're going to have the number 5 on your front cover. So whether you choose to have the second accordion fold in there after you're done with this, that is up to you. Some people want to make it so it's like an actual book that you're reading. Oh, this book would be backwards. The only requirement I'm making for you is that it would be able to stand up on its own. So when it's standing up, it would actually look like it's three-dimensional. I'm going to go ahead and put the second accordion on mine because I want it to be an art object and be able to have full dimensionality and no actual book features. So I'm going to flip it back open. And again, I'm going to line frame number 1 up with the number 1 on my accordion fold. Alright, and once you are done, it should be able to stand up on its own. It might have a little bit of a curved or beveled edge, and that is okay. It's going to look something like this. And that's how you make a tunnel book.